Hi there, and welcome to this live session with us at Hives.co and me, Alexander Wennerberg. While people are joining out there, very happy to see that people are joining here to join this live session. But for those of you who haven't been in touch with us before, this is a live session that we're doing every Tuesday to share use cases and answer any questions or thoughts that you might have around Hives and continuous improvement and working with change in different cases. And these kind of sessions that we're holding every Tuesday now are for everyone who are working with change, improvements, or need input in their work in the form of ideas, feedback, insights in order to make better decisions at the end. So as I mentioned, my name is Alexander, and I will be hosting this session. And with me, I also have my brilliant sidekick, Frederick, in the background, who will help out with any questions or moderate the chat if that might be needed. So please feel free to post any questions or thoughts in the chat section. In pretty much anything that we're talking about here today. So please just join with your questions or thoughts here as well. And of course, depending on what platform you're watching this live session on, if it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, or the streaming software itself, you might have this chat section on a little bit different places, but usually you have that chat section on your let's see, right side of the video itself. So feel free to post any questions or thoughts there while we're talking, and we'll try to bring that up during the Q&A here as well. All right, so let's get started with this session. So the theme for today is something that I guess that many of you have been working with, or at least trying out before. We're talking about audience engagement tools like Mentimeter, Kahoot, and so on, and how you can make sure to get better results by using it in a combination with Hives, or using Hives as a complementary tool, or the alternative as a tool to engage people and make sure that you can bring ideas, insights, and feedback to make better decisions in your organization. But first, before we talk more about the theme itself and show you the tool, which I'm of course also gonna do here for you, just a very, very short introduction for those of you who don't know Hives since before. So Hives is a tool that is used by organizations, big and small, to collect, prioritize, and keep track of ideas and feedback. And even though it might be sounding maybe a little bit cliched, we're all about making it easy for you and easy to use. That's really at the center of everything that we do in Hives. So no matter what kind of ideas or feedback or insights you might need as a change maker, a leader in your organization, and no matter from whom, Hives will be the easiest choice to make sure that you can capture and prioritize ideas and feedback in the easiest way possible. So you might ask why companies are using this and not other options out there. Of course, what a lot of companies and organizations sees out there is that to manage change, improvements, and projects in different cases, you need other people's input in different forms. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very hard to make decisions on the right solutions and the right way forward. And getting that input can, of course, sometimes also be very, very difficult because ideas and feedback are all over the place, usually. As you probably have experienced yourself before, if you've been using emails to manage this, they're not very transparent and very hard to follow up on these endless email threads. Spreadsheets are not very engaging to add ideas to, of course. And if you're doing workshops, which is great if you're a great facilitator, those can be also very time consuming, of course, both to coordinate, getting 10 people to join at the same time and force ideas to get created during just a few hours. And if you might be doing it on let's say on a whiteboard with sticky notes, you will have piles of documentation to manage afterwards. So yeah, you pretty much get it. You probably tried out a few of these alternatives before. So what we want to make sure here is that we don't leave great ideas behind, as we usually say, because those ideas could lead to improvements, great changes, and sometimes completely new solutions and innovations in your organization as well. So be sure to don't leave these great ideas behind in your organization. And the use cases practically is used usually is that Hives is used to make sure that you can get all of those ideas and feedback that we're talking about in a way that's easy for people to engage in and easy for you to manage to make sure that you take care of and keep track of the ideas and feedback that you have collected. So today it's usually and mainly used to get employee ideas and but also product feedback and audience insights in different use cases as well. So that's all to make sure that you can pretty much get the input that you need from the people that you need in a way that helps you get better information and find better ways to do things in the end. So enough about this short introduction. What we want to enable for you is to stop guessing and start asking, and that's what we want more teams and organizations to do out there. So to stop guessing and start asking more is always to make sure that you can get better input in all the decision-making processes that you're in. So the theme for today, as I mentioned, we are focusing on audience engagement tools like Mentimeter and Kahoot versus Hives today. Not necessarily that you need to replace it, but that you need a little bit different angles on different use cases depending on what you really want to make sure to do with the feedback and insights and ideas that you capture and collect in different cases out there. So I'm going to, let's see, switch over to the tool itself to make sure I can show it to you and demo it as well and give you a short introduction of the tool itself. So if you just give me a minute or two, I'm going to give you a short walkthrough of the tool, and then we're ready for some questions after that. So just before we go into the questions themselves, I just want to show you that pretty much everything in Hives, as I mentioned, is centered around being able to, in an easy way, collect, capture, keep track, and prioritize ideas, insights, and feedback. So what you're seeing here is what we call a collection, and that's pretty much at the center of everything that we do in Hives. So we believe that you need specific questions or themes or challenges and opportunity that you want to collect ideas for. So the more narrow and the more specific the question or the opportunity and challenge is, the more relevant ideas you will get as well. And how we believe that we usually structure this in the best way is to keep it as transparent as possible. So what we see here is that we've been asking a question about how do you think we could better serve our customers or clients. We've been giving some background just to get some context in what kind of ideas we're looking for here to get as relevant ideas as possible. And if the people that you share it with would like to submit an idea, they just click on plus idea, and it will be very, very fast for them to add their ideas into this collection, this question. And if we scroll down here as well, the usual use case is that we keep it as transparent as possible. That's, of course, something that you can adjust in the settings, but usually you get the most value out of it when you keep it as transparent as possible to make sure that you not just capture the people with the super creative idea minds, but also the people that can engage by liking and commenting on each other's ideas as well. So, for example, if I would like to take a look at one idea here, see who submitted that idea, I can like it and I can comment on it and so on as well. That's a very, very fast and easy way to make sure that we can engage and collect information and engagement in different ways, no matter if it's ideas or engagement in each other's ideas themselves. So that's just very, very briefly how Hives looks and what it is, a tool to collect ideas and keep track and prioritize the ideas. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the tool itself right now. I think we can probably set that into context depending on what kind of questions we have based on the theme today. So Frederick, do we have any questions so far?
Hello. Yeah, so let's start with a question regarding tools like Mentimeter. I mean, Mentimeter is a favorite tool of ours as well when it comes to interaction in real time
Definitely.
with people in the room, especially when you are hundreds of people. Mentimeter is a really good, engaging tool to use because it's simple and fun. But unfortunately, you can't continue working with the ideas or the content in Mentimeter. It's stuck there. You can export it, but it's you can't work with it in the tool. So the question is, how can Hives and Mentimeter work together to drive more effective data-driven decisions making and improvements within organizations?
Yeah. Okay. So no. First of all, I can just agree with you there that Menti is a very nice tool to use for audience engagement. I believe that I believe that when it comes to these two tools, if you would compare Mentimeter and Hives, for example, I think that we need to just set that out clear that if you want to have a real-time audience engagement, maybe you want to ask questions like how people feel, what they think about the 2 or 3 alternatives, and need fast answers in order to be able to engage the audience or interact with the audience in a nice way. That's a great way of doing it. But exactly as you mentioned, Frederick, we one of the biggest challenges here, I would say, that is we can't really make decisions based on what's more or less a post-it note. And if we want to get engagement from people that we want to get input from in the form of ideas, insights, and feedback, and so on, we usually also need a way to make sure that we can take care of what we collect here. So if we, for example, would be able to collect input from a audience, not just that we get the input itself. If I show you in Hives here, it's also a way that to make sure that you can manage what you collect. So, for example, if I open this up at the left side here, the manager menu, we can see that everything that we collect could also be managed in a process and in a workflow. So depending on what kind of methodologies or processes or workflows that you want to use, you can easily customize and tailor this to how you would like it to be. So I would say that real time audience engagement, that's great for live audiences when you want to collect like fast input or feelings or fast answers in order to interact with the audience, and then stop and not make more about it. While I would say that if you're going to work with more of an ongoing initiatives, I would definitely say that one pretty important thing here is that is the opposite to real time. I'm talking about asynchronous communication, meaning that you can collect input from people that not have to be at the same place at the same time when you're collecting the input, and then keep working with it. But of course, you can also if you want to use a audience engagement tool like Mentimeter and so on, you can easily export it or import it between Hives and Mentimeter and vice versa. So I would say it depends a little bit on how you would like to what the use case is, so to speak.
That said, if you want to keep it in one tool, so to say, very very likable feature in and a very often used feature in Mentimeter is the word cloud.
Yeah.
And you can we also have a word cloud in Hives if you want to show that. So you can definitely use Hives in real time as well if you like to keep it in one tool.
Definitely, and you can even, if you want to collect that kind of input, and you even want to, so for example, see what people are talking about the most. If you want to see, like, people are talking about a lot about feedback, you can just open that up in a side drawer here and easily see which ideas or which input is talking about feedback the most, and you can keep working with those as well. So definitely, if you wanna get it in the form of a word cloud, that's a very easy way to make sure that you can get the engagement.
Exactly. The reason why we have a word cloud, though, is to make it easier to make decisions. But I have another question here. How does Hives bridge the gap between real-time engagement and long-term tracking of improvements? And what are the advantage of combining the functionalities? I think you touched on it already, but given that we have the workflow in the tool, can you explain a little bit how that kind of, the advantage of having that instead of just an inbox, basically?
Definitely. So, as I mentioned, I touched upon it a little bit, but as so like the gap as I see it between these kind of worlds or tools, pretty much appears from as I mentioned, not being able to make decisions on too shallow information, because what you still want to do here is that you want to keep it easy and simple to engage in. So we want to be able to combine the situation where we have an easy way to engage our audience or our people, target groups, employees, customers, or audiences, and so on. But still have it in a situation where it's not really possible to make decisions on too shallow information when it's just collected. So what we want to do here is that when everything lands in an inbox, what's really neat here is that if you click on one of the contributions that you've collected, we can also see here that as I'm in this case, I'm signed in as a manager and admin, so I can see the process on the specific idea that we collected here. Which means that, so for example, in each and every one of these steps, you can add different tools to make sure that you can either select, score, interact with the idea in a way, or build upon and evolve on the idea itself as well. Because what we want to do here is that something that we often mention is that we want to go from we want to use quantity in order to find quality. And what we mean by that is that we want a quantity of different perspectives and different angles and inputs in order to give ourselves the best possible conditions to solve a challenge, or to move forward with an opportunity, or find answers to a question. But what we can't do here is that we can't make decisions on just one sentence or just a short title. What we need to do here is that we need to collect based on really like low threshold collections, where people can submit an idea with just like title, description, and an image, or so on, but where we also can keep working what we've collected. So we can go from, as I mentioned, a quantity of ideas or input, and then narrow that down pretty much as a funnel, until we get a low number of quality input that we can act on. So you can use these steps to make sure that you either use it as a selection process, where you choose and rank, prioritize ideas based on different parameters that are important to your organization. You can easily change and adjust these parameters as much as you'd like to. And then you want to move them forward into a situation where you have approvals or crowd votings, features, or different features to make sure that you can use tools to improve the decision-making process in your collections here.
Thank you. So I have another question here that ties into what you just talked about a little bit. And it's all about structure, because sometimes you have to work with other tools like Mentimeter, or sometimes you do a physical workshop and you collect data in other tools or environments. But how do you recommend to structure the initiatives? Because we usually say to our clients that, what do you need to make, what data do you need to make decision upon? That's that, what do you need on the table when we're done, basically. And how do you recommend to structure initiatives where you have to use, for example, Mentimeter or a physical workshop, but then you still want to continue working with the outcome?
Yeah, so you don't want to end up in a situation, as I mentioned before, where it's pretty much just a mirrored digital situation from the old whiteboard and post-it situation, where you just collect a bunch of post-it and it just ends up in a big pile of post-it notes that you throw into a drawer or something. So what we want to do here is that I think we need to make a little bit of a difference between the different tools and where the best use case is here, because how you want to structure this, from my point of view, is that if you want to have a fast way of getting the opinions or some kind of interaction, or some kind of poll or something, with a live audience engagement tools like Mentimeter are great to use. But if you are in a situation where you want to make something out of what you collect, meaning that you don't just want to have a short interaction with an audience, you want to collect information, and then you want to keep working with the information to provide you with a better situation to make better or more accurate decisions in different challenges and opportunities or questions. So how I would structure it is that, if it's possible, and not depending on real-time audience engagement tools, I would definitely collect it in the same place where I then later need to manage and keep track and prioritize the input itself, like Hives, for example. But if you're used to in a more of a live or real-time audience engagement tool like Mentimeter, you can definitely collect in those kinds of tools, and then set up a tool like Hives to make sure that you can import information, and then easily keep track and keep working with the information that you collected. So I would say that the conclusion would pretty much be that if you want to keep working with the input that you collected, and a audience tool or Mentimeter and so on is not enough to be able to make sure that you can keep working with the information or data that you collected.
Thank you. And also, I would say that the workflow that you set up in Hives, the different steps you see on the left side of the collections, you can do each of those steps in other tools or physically in a meeting or whatever suits you the best. But then you use Hives to document the findings of a session, either it's a Mentimeter or a workshop, to keep track, to make sure you get the data for each step. I think that's also the structure.
Definitely.
So the takeaway is to create the structure no matter what,
Definitely. And exactly as you mentioned, Frederick, if you want to have an easy way to keep track of the input, it doesn't really matter if it's collected through a workshop or an real-time audience or asynchronous or digitally and so on. What you need here is an easy workflow or an easy process to follow, to make sure that you can keep track of the input and manage the input and prioritize from it, so it doesn't get lost in a big pile of post-it notes or just a digital whiteboard or something else.
Exactly. Thank you. So I have a really good question here. Can you give us an example on where you have worked with this combination of tools?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that some of the most common situations where you are using either one of these tools or both of them would be like kickoffs or conferences or events in different forms, because I would say that it's a pretty good way of making sure that you can engage people when you finally have them gathered in some kind of form. So what's really nice here is that you can really choose if you want to collect, for example, ideas or insights or an input in different forms from an audience, from like basically from a stage or from a workshop format or different kind of formats. Or if you, so for example, if you want to have, if you're having an event or a trade show, you can decide to set up like QR codes or share links to different collections here, where people easily with their mobile phone can add input to the different questions that you're using, and still at the same time have it in a format that makes it possible to keep working with the input after you've collected it. It doesn't just end up in a fancy or a shiny chart or some format like that. You can of course see it from a chart perspective as well, but you can, the important stuff here is that if you want to have a really practical use case of these kind of tools, I would definitely use situations where people are gathered already, like conferences, events, kickoffs, and so on. That's a pretty good place to start to make sure that you engage people.
Yeah, and I can give you an example as well. I made a tour in Sweden with a company called Rise, or an organization I would say called Rise. It was about the battery ecosystem, and we had several workshops in several cities with hundreds of people at each session. And we did a physical workshop where we worked with Post-its. But then in the way they were set up, there was that each table working with Post-its kind of summarized everything, the joint ideas in Hives, so we could continue working with it. It's really good for that as well.
That's a great situation. It's a very, very good example also of a situation where a lot of organizations out there, and you might have seen it as well, if you're watching this, that you have been able to engage people, you've been able to collect input and stuff in different formats, but then it all falls apart when it comes to keep working with it. It just ends up in a pile of Post-it notes or a fancy chart somewhere. So I think really the takeaway here is that you need to collect things in a format that's useful to make sure that you can keep working with it, to make something a reality of it, and make better decisions at the end.
Thank you. So that was the questions for today.
Great. No more questions for today. So as I mentioned, we I can just let me share my other tab here as well. I can just show you that one really quickly and tell you that as I mentioned in the beginning, we're doing this every Tuesday, so feel free to join any Tuesday. We usually have a theme or a question or a comparison for every Tuesday to talk around and share our experiences and best practices and learnings around. And if you want to get a demo of Hives as a tool, you're free to go on hives.co//demo. If you want to try it yourself, we have a free version that's that you can try out for yourself if you want to do that in a smaller team and organization. But also want to mention that feel free to reach out with any questions or thoughts. Here you have my contact information here. If you want to contact me or Frederick at LinkedIn or email, feel free to do that. And with that said, I would just like to say thank you for today and see you next Tuesday. So have a lovely Tuesday and see you next week. Hope. Bye-bye.